If you're a B2B business owner, you already know the most scalable ways to get leads are paid ads, cold email, content, and ultimately building inbound demand. And in most cases, those should be your primary channels. But if you're in a highly specific and competitive market, there are always going to be companies that you want to work with that are never going to fill out your form, never reply to an email, and ultimately never see your ads. And whether you run a marketing agency, a SaaS company, or any other high ticket B2B service, there are whales that you simply cannot reach passively. And that's where cold calling still matters. I want to be very, very clear with you. I do not believe that cold calling is the most effective client acquisition strategy in 2026, but I do believe it's a mandatory skill to learn. Because when you want a specific prospect, sometimes you don't get to wait for them to come to you. You have to go out and get them. And I would say that paid ads are kind of like Tinder. Cold email is ultimately like Instagram DMs, but cold calling is just walking up to that bitch, grabbing your nuts, and starting the conversation in person. If you don't know how to do that correctly, you're going to be locked out of a whole category of deals. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to approach B2B cold calls the right way, without sounding salesy, without getting hung up within the first 5 seconds, without being desperate, and ultimately without sounding like a Nigerian scammer. To get tactical, there's one thing that you need to understand about cold calling is that every single cold call fails for one reason, which is sales resistance. And when you cold call someone, you're simply just interrupting their day. They don't want this call, and their natural knee-jerk reaction is that they're not interested and just hanging up. And that doesn't mean they don't have a problem. It simply means their nervous system just went into defense mode. So if you're new to sales, the number one skill that I talk about on this channel is learning how to lower prospect sales resistance. It's not objection handling, not pitching, not clever one-liners. It's lowering sales resistance. And the fastest way to do that is by leading with curiosity, not your product. Back in the 1990s and ultimately early 2000s, sales training always taught you to lead with your company's value, lead with the pitch, and that doesn't work anymore because prospects ultimately are way smarter. And if a prospect doesn't believe they have a problem, you cannot sell them a solution. Same way a doctor can't prescribe medication if the patient doesn't have anything wrong with them. Same exact thing in sales. And if you hop on a cold call and within the first minute, you're saying things like, oh, we can get you, 30 booked calls in 30 days, or we can increase efficiency by 15%, you sound like a Nigerian scammer that's promising $10 million because the prospect hasn't earned that information yet. Your job on the cold call is not to sell, it's just to open up the conversation. And that's where most people mess up. So you want to lead with questions, create curiosity, and get the prospect to talk. And once the prospect becomes aware of the problem, then you go ahead and introduce the solution. And that's ultimately the framework that we're going to break down in this video.
Alrighty, guys. So this is the cold call framework that I always use. It's intentionally generic so that you can apply it to any single B2B business, agency, SaaS, services, whatever. But the goal of a cold call is not to sell, okay? So the biggest mindset shift that you guys can make, and I think just making this mindset shift is going to help you guys out the most, is your goal here is not to go for the kill. It's not to sell right off the bat. It's ultimately just to continue the conversation. And the end goal is to book the next step, okay? Too many people are results focused and they're looking to get, just to win over the deal right off the bat on a cold call. And that's not going to happen. You need to take baby steps. Especially if you try to be results oriented and try to win over the deal on a cold call, it's going to come off very, very salesy. People are going to hang up. Okay. So the goal is to continue the conversation. Just book the next step. That's ultimately the end goal. Okay. If you get hung up on in the first 30 seconds, nothing else matters. So let's start with what doesn't work, because a lot of times realizing what doesn't work works a lot better with this. So rule number one, never pitch within the first 30 seconds. The fastest way to get hung up on is pitching early. And the moment a prospect smells that this is a sales call, this guy is about to pitch me, I'm being sold to, they're going to be gone. Okay. You have to remember, you got to think about yourself and place yourself in the prospect's shoes. And ultimately, for a lot of things in business, this is going to help you out a lot more. As a marketer, as a sales rep, you got to put yourself in the prospect's shoes and think, for example, would I want to continue a conversation with someone like this? Would I buy a service if it's marketed like this, et cetera, okay? So Most business owners are extremely busy. They're in meetings, at lunch, driving. Maybe they're already getting, 5+ cold calls a day. So if someone calls you and immediately starts talking about their business, they don't give a fuck because they have their own issues. And ultimately, it just sounds like you don't care what they do. And you want to ultimately just be curious. So the biggest shift is you don't want the call to end. Stay on the call as long as possible. Rule number 2, lead with curiosity, not deception. We don't do deceptive bullshit, but we do lead with curiosity. Your job at a cold call is to, number 1, get the prospect to talk. Number 2, get them talking about their business more specifically. And lastly, get them to open up about their problems. And that's real psychology behind this, because studies show that the more someone talks about themselves, the more dopamine they release. And when a prospect is talking, they're more relaxed, they're more open, and they give you better information. And ultimately, better information equals easier closes later. Okay, step 1 is the intro. Now, let's already assume that you're talking to a decision maker. Very, very simple. Hey, is this John? Hey, is this Mark? If you have a good lead source, Apollo or whatever you guys are using, you guys should have the name of the business owner. If you're just saying, hey, is this the business owner? It doesn't sound good. But if you just say, hey, John, how's it going? You come off more friendly. Instead of saying, hey, is this the business owner? The guy's going to know that, oh, you don't know me personally. But if you start the call off saying, hey, John, how's it going? Or, hey, John, he's going to say, hey, man, what's up? And then you go into it. So it's like, hey, yeah, this is, it's just John from X, Y, and Z company. I was looking at your website and I saw that you're in the roofing industry. Is that correct? And then you're gonna pause and roll into frame. So you're just acting curious. Majority of times, these guys are gonna say, "Yeah, what's up?" Or you can say, "Yeah, it's just John from X, Y, and Z company." Or you can just say, "Hey, it's just John from X, Y, and Z. I was just looking at your website. You're in Atlanta, right? And it looks like you do roofing. Is that correct?" They're gonna say, "Yeah. What's up? How can I help you?" And you're not pitching, you're not promising results. You're simply just getting them engaged, and now they're listening and they're not defensive. Okay. Now, step number 2 is the frame. Why you're calling. You're immediately going to get into business. Okay. Yeah. Quick question. How are you currently handling generating jobs right now? Generating residential jobs right now? And then they're going to say, well, referrals, or yeah, man, we do it in-house, yada, yada. Ultimately, at this point, you're just trying to get as much information as possible. And then you get into the system check. Okay, yeah, who are you guys currently using? Or, yeah, how's that working out for you? If they say, oh, it's working out great, okay, cool. You don't bash the company. You just say, oh, that's really great to hear. And it's like, what do you like about them specifically? You get the prospect to continue talking about what they like. So even if they like what they're doing, you can possibly get in there. But let's assume that the prospect hates what they're going to do, hates what they're using currently. You can get into the discovery immediately and pull a tangible problem. Now, let's say a prospect says, yeah, man, just why are you calling? What do you offer? You simply just use Jordan Belfort's straight line method. Now, the straight line method, very, very simple. Everyone knows the fastest way to get point A to point B is a straight line. Point A is opening up the call. Point B on a cold call is setting the appointment. Any single time a prospect asks, what do you offer? What are you calling? You're getting off the straight line. You answer it very, very vaguely and then get back into the script with the question. Hey, man, totally. I can't explain what we do, but it's a little different for every company. We work with a lot of roofing business owners that are doing $1.5 to $5 million annually, who are dealing with things like financially unqualified leads, overspending on marketing budget. So, John, just so I'm not wasting your time, where do you feel like you need help with right now? Or what do you feel like out of these two problems are you dealing with the most? And ultimately, you're just answering what you do specifically at a high level, very generic, and then getting back into it. Hey, out of these 2 to 3 pain points that I mentioned, where do you feel like you need help the most? Or like, what do you feel like you resonate with the most? And they're going to say, oh, well, we're dealing with financially unqualified leads. Like, boom, then you're back into the discovery. And then from there, you get into a light discovery. You want to pull a tangible problem, and you always want to lead with the problem. Got it. So, I guess what's the biggest problem that you're running into with actually generating these qualified residential roofing deals. And then they're going to start answering. Now, if a prospect gives you a vague answer, you can do two things. You can either sit back and say, and then you just get them to clarify. The way you get them to clarify is simply just repeat back the sentence to them with a curious tone. For example, they say, oh, well, we've hired a couple guys to do it. Then you could say, hired a couple guys to do it? And then he's going to say, yeah, well, we work with X, Y, and Z company. It's like, oh, okay. So now you want the prospect to open up. You never want them to give vague answers. For example, if they say, oh, well, we're just getting bad leads. It's like, you don't leave it at that. You just say, oh, bad leads how? And they're going to say, oh, well, they're not financially qualified. It's like, oh, well, I guess how many are financially qualified? And then boom, you get them talking more. So if they're ever vague, just repeat back to them in a curious tone. Or you can guide them. So you can say, okay, well, look, most residential roofing business owners that I talk to, they're frustrated either with just getting super financially unqualified leads, or the leads that they're getting right now are out of their service area, or they're simply just spending way too much money on their marketing that it doesn't provide an ROI. I guess which one of these do you feel like are you dealing with right now? Or does that sound familiar? And then, you're kind of just throwing him up an alley-oop for him to say, oh, yeah, all these leads we're getting are financially unqualified, or all these leads we're getting are out of our service. It's like, okay, gotcha. And then this is where the magic happens. You get the experience and the impact. Any single time you're on a sales call, you want to get a specific story from the prospect, because stories are ultimately what gets people to relive pain. Think about a therapist. A therapist is always saying, oh, well, when was the time that you noticed this happen? And then someone's going to talk about their trauma back when they're little, maybe, something like that. This is the same thing. When people are talking about past experiences, you want them to ultimately relive it. And if it's a painful one, they're going to feel more pain. And that's when you get people to actually change. And the way they change is, they go ahead and hop on a call with you so that you can sell them. So it's like, hey, what have you noticed about the way that you're currently, generating leads right now that's just making it harder than it should be? Then he could say, yeah, well, last month or the end of the year, I took a look at our marketing spend, and we spent over $100,000 on marketing on Meta, but we really only did about $200,000 in revenue. It's like, oh, really? And I guess, what's profit margin on that? And if he says, oh, well, 20% profit margins, it's like, okay, so I guess, what does that leave you with at the end? And he's like, oh, well, like $20,000. It's like, wow. So you're running a full business for $20,000. And it's like, boom. Notice how you just got the prospect to talk about how a painful moment, how he's talking about how he spent, $200,000 on his marketing budget, or $100,000, only made $200,000 back in revenue, and his profit margins are low. It's like, wow, I guess, has that always been the case, or is this something that's fairly new? And if he says it's fairly new, it's like, oh, well, I'm sure you're not going to say this, but in your mind, you're thinking, I'm sure you're not, too happy with that drop. Or if that's always been the case, it's like, do you want to stay here forever? And that's when you get into the consequence questions. If you follow my page, or you follow Jeremy Miner, ultimately, everyone knows about consequence questions. This isn't something that I created, but it's a killer. So it's like, hey, man, let me ask you this. I guess, what happens if things stay how they are the next 6 months, with you, really only bringing in like $20,000 on $100,000 marketing ad spend? Or, hey man, what happens if things stay how they are the next year and you don't make any changes to how, you're generating leads? They're going to say, oh, well, shit, it's not going to be, we'll be out of business. Or, especially if you get the prospect to talk about their personal, like, and my wife's going to divorce me. It's like, boom. And you're not happy because obviously you're a good person. You don't want the guy's wife to divorce him. But if a person is relating business to their personal problem, you cut them deep enough to then you're good. But if a prospect continues to be vague, then you use these follow-ups. Hey, do you think it eventually slows things down, or does it just stay annoying? Or, does that end up costing you time, money, or just added stress? Or what's the risk if nothing changes? You ultimately just want to ask him this again. You never want to accept the bullshit answer at the front end. It's like, yeah, are you okay with being in the same spot 6 months from now? Or I guess does something need to shift? And then if they say, yeah, man, we need to make a change, check them. It's like, okay, well, why do you need to make a change? Because then you're going to figure out the psychological reasoning. It's like, well, we really need to get to $500,000 in revenue in 2026. It's like, well, why? Like, what does that do for you? Like, obviously that'd be great, but like, why 500,000? He's like, oh, well, it's just a goal that I want to hit. It's like, well, 500,000, you answer that very specifically and very, very quick. Like, what does that do for you on a more personal level? Then maybe he says, oh, well, now I can experience X, Y, and Z. It's like, boom, then you're good to go. And in reality, people think that adding these personal questions don't work in B2B, but it's ultimately because you just have low rapport with prospects. And when I say rapport, I'm not talking about bullshit like, hey, man, I see you're from San Diego, or hey, man, how's the weather over there? It's like rapport means you're like synced up. It's behavioral synchronization, and you got the prospect to open up. The more a prospect opens up to you, the more intelligence that you have. And the more you understand your prospect, the more rapport you have with them. And if a prospect is talking about their personal life, that's when you know you're good to go. But you can get these, high earners, these business owners, and these type A prospects, you can get them to open up and ask more personal questions. Obviously, you have to tiptoe and do it, in a specific way. But business owners are people. Everyone always says, oh, well, you're not going to get people to open up like this on a B2B sales call. This is only a B2C thing. It's like, okay, jackass. Are business owners people? Do business owners have personal lives? Do business owners have issues? Yes. And the biggest thing is a lot of these type A personalities, which is a lot of business owners, they have the most issues because they are so ambitious, they're looking for more. If a guy is just a stoner and he's just sitting on his couch all day doing nothing with his life, he doesn't see in his mind that he has issues because he doesn't give a fuck. But in reality, you can get these prospects to open up way more. You just have to build up enough rapport and get enough information first and then dig deeper in the call. Notice how I didn't start asking personal questions until we got to step 8. It's not like I started off here. I started off building rapport about their business, understanding them, and then that's when I get into that. Okay? Now, point number 8 is huge. Confirm that they're the sole decision maker, or if they have anyone else, include them in the call. Because at this point, you kind of already know that they're good to go. If you've done a good enough job asking questions, then it's like, cool, this is very, very simple. So a big thing with B2B, it's just like B2C. B2C sales, you're going to get a bunch of I need to talk to my wife cucks who give you that response. B2B, they're going to say, I need to talk to my partner, my sales manager, whatever. Just confirm the decision makers before you hop on the call. Okay. Now, next, and you can do this after the value hook too. It really doesn't matter. But from here, you want to do a value hook. This is ultimately kind of like a short pitch without being too salesy. You're just giving a quick overview of what you guys do, because at this point, you've really led the majority of the call with talking about the prospect and not what you do. So you want to give a quick 30-second to a minute value hook. So it's like, cool. So John, I appreciate you for giving me that information. Just so you have a quick idea of Magner Marketing, we work, like I said, directly with residential roofing business owners doing $1.5 to $5 million a year. Typically helping them avoid overspending on marketing, or helping them get rid of these unqualified leads with our proven X, Y, and Z strategies. That way that you can, number one, get qualified leads. Number one, get leads that are actually in your area. And lastly, that you can scale to $500,000 a month. So you're going to insert their desired outcome. Biggest thing is you don't want to say something generic. You want to make it feel tailored to them. So as you notice, the prospect, said that they wanted to hit $500,000 a month. It's like, cool. So that way you can solve, number one, I know you're getting financially unqualified leads. Number two, I know you're getting jobs outside of your area. And lastly, ultimately, so that you can just scale to $500,000 a year, like you said. and then boom, you booked a call. If that sounds remotely relevant, I'd say let's hop on a call to see how that actually works. And then you lead. You don't ask them what time works for you. You say, hey, I've got 4 p.m. or 8 p.m. available. Which time works best for you? Very, very simple. And then the biggest thing is from here, you want to go ahead and once you've already done the hard part, set the frame for the next call. Perfect. Before I let you go, I have a few expectations. Number one, I'm going to go ahead. Okay, cool. Sorry, I had to change that. So you're going to set the frame for the next call. So it's like, hey, before I let you go, can I just set a few quick expectations so we can make the next call worth it? They're going to say, yeah. It's like, okay, cool. So number one, you should always have a pre-call video. If you sell marketing services, have a pre-call video talking about what you guys do specifically. Your SaaS, show a demo of your SaaS. And the biggest thing is you're not sending this over to them and saying this is homework, okay? You are going to build value and give them a reason to look this over. Because a lot of people say, hey, I have a few homework tips for you before our call. Like, please watch this video. It's like, no. Build value around it so they actually want to watch it. Give them a reason to watch the call because these people are busy. It's like, okay, well, John, I have this video built specifically for you that's going to explain, how we can get you from $100,000 to $500,000 this year. Can you watch this video before our call on Monday? So number one, get them to watch the video. Don't do the call unless they actually watch the video. Number two, build value around the call. The biggest reason why show rates are low is because people don't give the prospect a reason to hop on the call. Let's be honest, a lot of times these people don't want to show up because they don't see value. So the way that you do that is, first of all, have a good discovery on your calls. But number two, build a little bit of hype on the call. It's like, hey, number two, these calls are an hour long. And I'm going to break down how we can fix those specific bottlenecks in your business, like how we can actually go out and, stop you from getting unqualified leads, turn that 30% qualification rate to 60% qualification rate. Ensure that 99% of your leads are actually going to be in your service area. And lastly, see how we can get you to $500,000 next year. Do you have an hour set aside for Monday? It's like, just ensure they have enough. And you're not asking them like, hey, can you hop on a call because you already booked the call in. It's like, hey, for our call on Monday at 4 p.m., like, can you set a time an hour? Because otherwise we should reschedule, okay? So build value around the call. Ensure that prospects watch the pre-call video because you don't want prospect to show up. You don't want this to be an education call. Speed up the process. And in your call, in your video, it's going to be going over a bunch of different values. So explain that. And lastly, it's like, hey, we're going to show you some things on the computer. So, can you join on your laptop or computer on Monday, instead of your phone? It's like, yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. So you have three things. They're showing up, watching the video. The video should include what you guys do, who you work with, the results you've gotten, who you don't want to work with. Probably, some discrepancies on the price. Number two, ensure that they have an hour to actually show up on the call. Kind of explain and build a little bit of hype around the call on what you're going to do. And then lastly, ensure that they have the hour set aside. Okay. So guys, this is the entire cold call script. Okay. The biggest thing that you need to understand is on your cold calls, you are not selling the prospect on the deal. You are not going from point A to point Z. You're going from point A to point B. Point A is the call. Point B is selling the booked appointment. Okay? Very, very simple. Lower sales resistance. Act curious. Don't pitch within the first 5 minutes. Continue asking questions. And then ultimately, once you get that set frame for the next call, ensure once you catch someone that's interested, ensure that they stay on. And then from there, you're good. Now, some quick tips before I go. For cold calling or any outbound, for setters, business owners, whatever, always double dial at least. I'm that guy that triple dials. Maybe it's not the best thing to triple dial, but double dialing is great, because if you're calling a random, especially to their phone number, and they see it and it's an unknown number, most people don't answer. Okay, so double dial, triple dial, do whatever you have to do. Do not pitch within the first 30 seconds and lead with curiosity. Okay, so if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe. We will see you on the next piece.